Jimmy Butler returned last night for the Miami Heat, and while he did return to the court, seems like word is that things are still unfixable in Miami, and even with somebody saying that Jimmy isn't quite done yet trying to force his way out of Miami. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Plus, the Dallas Mavericks dangling Daniel Gafford around in trade talks to add a perimeter defender. We'll talk about all that and more right after this.
Welcome to the number one place for your daily basketball news and analysis, NBA Central.
What's going on, basketball fans? Welcome to another episode of NBA Central, your number one spot for everything basketball related. I'm the host, Sir Hayes. More importantly, you guys can follow the channel at NBA Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. And Jimmy Butler made his return for the Miami Heat on the court. He did start upon his return. He did score 18 points of 7 of 15 shooting with 3 rebounds, 2 assists. Now, the Miami Heat did lose that game to the Denver Nuggets 133-113. But the interesting part isn't just the game. It's the part that came out earlier in the day before the game started in regards to this thing is still unfixable between Jimmy Butler and the Miami Heat, even going so far as Jimmy Butler saying that he would only stay with the Miami Heat if it meant picking up his trade option. His player option to facilitate a trade, right? So, that's what it comes down to it. And, when you hear all the things that have come out, even, Dwyane Wade saying that Jimmy Butler has been afforded things that even him, LeBron, and Chris Bosh weren't, in the way that the Miami Heat has really, let Jimmy Butler be the star that he is and given him a lot. Like, he's taken private flights before. He's stayed in his own hotel rooms before. He's done those type of things and had those accommodations. I think when you hear somebody like Dwyane Wade say that those are things that him and LeBron didn't even get with the Miami Heat, it really paints a different picture on just how much Pat Riley and the Miami Heat have really, given, how much leeway they've given Jimmy Butler to just be Jimmy, right? And this is one of the things that's, when you look at the player empowerment movement and how much power that these players have nowadays, it really puts a bad light on that you gave up too much. The Miami Heat gave up too much. They gave too many caveats out to Jimmy Butler, and now it's coming back all to blow up in their face. And it really does bring the question of, is Heat culture real? Is Heat culture something that is going to go away? Is it something that's going to be strengthened after Jimmy Butler goes away eventually? But, to even hear that Jimmy is not done yet, forcing his way or doing what needs to do to force his way out of Miami, I wish I could say I was surprised by it. We've seen it. Every stop that Jimmy Butler's gone to, it's basically ended in bullshit, to just be 100% frank. And so, while I'm sure the Miami Heat fans are tired of this, I'm sure Miami Heat players are tired of this, which does seem like more and more people are just kind of over the Jimmy Butler nonsense. But when it comes down to it, what are they going to do? They're in a position where, honestly, they should have moved off of this before. I get it that while you're winning and the way that Jimmy Butler has sacrificed out on the court and how that's helped the Miami Heat, but the Heat should have saw this going the way. If all this is true, what we're hearing about Jimmy Butler, right, is that, the Miami Heat should have known that this was coming this way. And yeah, hearing that it's not fixable now should not be a surprise by any stretch of the imagination for anybody. This has been what it's been for Jimmy Butler. At 35 years old, he's not going to change, right? So when it comes down to it, when he talks about what's going to happen with this team and things like that, Jimmy's, response basically saying he was told to have no comment in regards to the trade request and things like that. This is a shit show. And the Miami Heat have they have their place in this being a shit show as well. You cannot ignore Pat Riley and the Miami Heat and the luxuries that they've given Jimmy Butler and the fact that they didn't move off of this quicker. We knew at the beginning of the season when Jimmy wanted that extension and the Miami Heat were hesitant to give it to him that it was probably going to turn into a shit show. We knew that was going to be the case. A lot of people saw the writing on the wall, but the question is why didn't the Miami Heat see the writing on the wall? Were they so caught up, right, in believing their own hype of Heat culture that it ended up blowing back up in their face and turning into the shit show that it's now become for the Miami Heat? That's the question there. And so now with where everything stands, where everything sits, the Miami Heat really only have themselves to blame. Not to say that Jimmy doesn't. He's a grown-ass man. He's responsible for his own actions. Make no mistake about it. But when you look at the way that this has gone for this team, they should have seen the writing on the wall. And this seems like a perfect example of why you cannot believe your own hype. You can't get high on your own supply. You can't get caught up in your own bullshit. And that's what happened with the Miami Heat when it came to this Jimmy Butler situation. So, hearing teams that could be in, teams that could be out, the way that it could go, all of this is just a bunch of shit around this franchise that they did not have to deal with, but now they are. And we'll see what the future holds for them if they can find a trade destination for Jimmy Butler, because to hear that Jimmy is not done yet, is not done with trying to force his way out of there, hey, it's concerning when it comes down to it. Now, we did have Shams on what the Miami Heat are looking for in this situation. He said this: they want to have their needs satisfied as well in terms of their desire for role players that can come in and contribute. Particularly having draft capital, and overall on this roster, they're not going to just move Butler to move him. They want to get players that they feel can help this team compete. That's how Pat Riley has always been, that this is going to be a fluid situation, but both sides are prepared for a level of uncomfortableness. And listen, I hope that they are, because Jimmy Butler is damn sure going to make this uncomfortable. He's going to make it uncomfortable for everybody around him. He's going to make it uncomfortable for the franchise. And we'll see. We'll see what that's going to hold. Now, for one team, looking to trade a disgruntled star, it's another team trying to find maybe their path. It came out today that the Dallas Mavericks are in the market or have been shopping and dangling around Daniel Gafford in hopes to find another perimeter defender. Now, Daniel Gafford, who the Mavericks traded for at the trade deadline last year, came in, helped them go to a finals run, all that type of thing. But when you look at the rise of Derek Lively, Daniel Gafford, whose season hasn't been bad, but hasn't really had the same kind of, outside of the box score stats, had this same kind of impact that what he had last year. So if they're looking to move on from Daniel Gafford to try to bring something back to help this team in their run, it can make some sense. Now, I don't think that the Dallas Mavericks should be a team that's panicked or in a rush to make a move with the depth that they have there, but I do think that you can't deny that they lost something with losing Derrick Jones Jr. to that team. And so if they're looking to try to find a way to bring some of that back, right, and if they're willing to give up the big man to get that done, I'm not necessarily knocking the Dallas Mavericks for that. Like I've said before, your team should always be in a place to make moves that make you better. And with Daniel Gafford's $13 million contract, he's an expiring contract next year. If they look at that and say, hey, Derek Lively is on a rookie scale deal, we feel confident about what Derek Lively can bring to this team. He's leading the team in rebounds, right? And he's the starter now when he's playing and when he's not out. That can make some sense. Now, of course, the 1.7 blocks, the 8 rebounds that he's leading the team with, all those type of things are great. But I think when you look at it as well, like, you got to question, is he going to stay healthy? And that's the question that the Dallas Mavericks need to try to find for themselves to try to determine what they're going to do next and when it comes to making any type of move. We'll see. I'll say this. I commend the Dallas Mavericks for being a team that could very well hold. They could hold steady. With the moves that they made this offseason, they could hold steady at this trade deadline and just try to get healthy and try to fight for what they can. And I think that they would have some success in doing that. But now in trying to move on, right, and still try and find ways to improve this team and always looking for those deals, they could stay ahead of the curve. And that's not something that I feel is bad at all. And we'll, of course, see where it goes with that. But I think overall, when you're looking at this team in the Dallas Mavericks, them being out and being willing to go out in the trade market is the right thing to do if you can find the deal. If not, you hold things. Daniel Gafford will still be an expiring contract next year and in this offseason, where you can look to flip him if your season ends early or whatever it is, and you find out, hey, this is what we need. Now we've gone through the season, we went through the playoffs, and now we know exactly what we need. It is what it is, and I think there's nothing wrong in it. That's what more franchises should do. Not make moves because you feel like you need to make them, but make moves that you want to make because they actually make your team better. And to take your time in doing so. There's no rush. You don't need to do it. We've seen teams before that rush to make deals, and it does end up hurting them in the long run. That's something that you really want to avoid right now as well, and we'll see what happens when it comes down to that. The last bit of news that we got before we get out of here is that, per rumors, is that the Golden State Warriors right now are still looking at trade scenarios, and they're prioritizing players like Nikola Vučević and Myles Turner in those scenarios. Now, I do think that Nikola Vučević is more available than Myles Turner per se. I think with the Pacers really improving and rising up that Eastern Conference over the last couple of weeks, they aren't necessarily looking to. But I do think that, either one of these guys really makes sense for different reasons. Myles Turner is more of a two-way player than Nikola Vučević. Vuč is a better offensive player, especially with what he's doing this season. And I think that Vuč, with the defense that they already have with Golden State, would make more of sense. But Myles Turner can make a lot of sense for that team too. if you can pry him away from the Pacers and give up some of your picks to do so while maintaining some of your young players, which we've already heard the Warriors don't want to mortgage their future to make moves now, I think that's the best case for them. So we'll see. Vuč right now, $20 million this season, $21 million next season. He's a two-time All-Star. He's putting up really good numbers of 20 and 10 this year as well. You look at it, Myles Turner's a little bit younger. He's averaging 15 and 7. He does have more years. The final year of his 2-year deal is is $19.2 million this season. So, they're right around the same amount of money. They guys got to figure it out, and we'll see what happens there. But, guys, let me know what you guys think on all that down below. Make sure you're following us at NBA Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, NBA Central Show at gmail.com. And then lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the number one spot for everything basketball related. And I'll see you guys the next time I feel like making a video, probably tomorrow. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Breaks Media.